All right, we are live. Hi, everybody. Welcome. And if you saw my stream last night, you saw that I said I wanted to interview some people who actually know what's going on down there better than I do. And I have here tonight Jorge. He is he he's someone who actually got to live through it. He's now in the States, but you were there. Have you lived in Nicaragua all your life?
Basically, I live in Nicaragua my entire life, and I had to move out from there this past June 23rd. So I've been here in the States probably just like 2 months and something. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to do this. I'm really glad that you did invite me because my country is going through a lot of things that normally people doesn't know, haven't heard about it. First of all, it's pretty weird, especially knowing about Nicaragua. First of all, because it's a third world country located in Central America that most of the people doesn't even know of that exist. But um, so technically, my name is Jorge Vargas. I'm 24 years old. I'm a graphic designer, and for hobby also, I'm a photographer. So that's just a little bit about what technically I do. And um, well, as you said, I lived all the protest situation that started back in April, and because of the violence and all the situation that happened, I had to leave my country 2 months ago, and had to become a refugee here in the States.
Have there been a lot of Nicaraguans that have been able to come to the States as refugees? I mean, I know a
Yeah,
lot of them wouldn't have the money to even be able to travel here at all. Um,
yeah. There is a lot of people that have left Nicaragua, not the United States as the main country to go out, but
mhm.
there is at least 230,000 people that have left the country to Costa Rica,
Mm.
and that is the closest country that people prefer to, well, not prefer, that had to leave the country to go in. And now Costa Rica is going through another situation that it seems similar to what we are going through, but in obviously in a way less dimension.
Hmm. So for people who are watching, a lot of them, yeah, may not have heard of Nicaragua at all, or they may, know something about the country, but so many of them have no idea what's going on. So can you take us through kind of what's going on now, how it started, and
Sure.
what you've
Uh,
seen and all that? Yeah.
Well, what Nicaragua is living right now technically is a dictatorship that has been becoming established in the last 11 years. Uh, Ortega, which is the dictator in Nicaragua, he has been the president in the last 11 years, and this is technically his second term in the history, because back in the 80s he was also the dictator, and stuff started going really bad, and he left the power in 1990. Um, but technically, what is currently happening, it started with some changes he wanted to do with the social security, um, the social security in Nicaragua. They His family is in control of everything technically. So what they did is that they took all the social security money and they broke the organization. So all the people that has been paying for social security has lost their money technically, because they use all this money to pay for trips, for birthdays, for luxuries. And what the one of the president's sons, who is Laureano Ortega, he had a birthday party that it cost $40,000.
Hmm.
Like, it was like that crazy. And for a country, for a third world country, that's just too much.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I mean, what
obviously,
would, to kind of give a general I don't know, a sense of sorry, I don't know what the right word is, but what would be the average annual income in Nicaragua for just a normal person?
For a normal person, it could be probably the minimum salary. It's based right now in like $170 per month, probably
Okay.
around that. So
So that would be minimum wage.
yeah, that's
Be
minimum
about
wage. So you can do the
about
math.
$2,000 a year. A little over
Yeah,
2,000 a year is minimum wage. And
exactly.
he spent
And
40,000, so that's what 20 years income on uh, minimum wage, 20 years worth of income on one birthday party. So
right,
everybody can
it's crazy. So
put that
we
into their own
we
home monetary
we
system.
I believe that uh, Nicaragua it's a pretty rich country, but that is in poverty because of their politicians.
Mm.
Uh, it's a country that has been heated by corruption and different dictators along their history. So, but back to your question.
Yes.
Uh, so what he did technically, he created a law that uh, they will charge us more to pay for social security, and for people that it's already enjoying for what they did on their jobs and taking money on old people, they had to give back to the government. I don't remember if it was 5 or 10% of the money that they're supposed to get from the social security. So everybody got mad at it, and this is just the the last thing that the government did to get people's patients out, because actually they have been doing a lot of stuff in the past years. So La UCA, which is my former college, they decided to start a protest against this law. And what they got on the first day that it was on April 18th, it was repression from Sandinista sympathizers, that these guys works on a way that if someone started to protest, Daniel Ortega will send the Sandinista sympathizers to beat you up and try to get people calm and say, okay, if I start a protest, they are going to beat me up, so I won't do
Mm-hmm.
it. But that actually just started a rage in all the people. And
Yeah.
next
And
day they keep protesting, and more people came to it, and it was just not the students, it was more people. And I remember being at my work that day, because my brother he went to the protest, and he texted me and he was like, I'm going to the protest, but this is happening. And I was like, I started watching a live stream on Facebook that Ortega sent like the Sandinista sympathizers, like maybe 200 people or something like that, to beat up a lot of people, all people.
to clarify,
It,
the
yeah,
Sandinistas are the political party in power right now, right?
correct, correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
People who aren't
technically,
familiar with Nicaraguan politics may not know what the Sandinistas are.
yeah. Technically, they are the only politician power. I'll drive you through it in the next questions,
Okay.
but so yeah, that's how everything started. But after the Sandinista sympathizers, he sent the police, and the police started shooting at the people. And when the first people died, um, we all started looking at each other like, okay, so now what we do? Because this has gone to a next level. It's not just repression on a way that he's sending someone to beat us up or doesn't let us uh, protest on a democratic way. So we're like, okay, we need to keep protesting and finding ways to take him out of the power. So that
Mm.
became when he sent the police and started killing people. It wasn't about the social security law anymore. It was about taking him out of the power,
Yeah.
because he was starting to kill us.
Yeah.
So technically that's how it started. That was like the small spark that turned on the entire fire. Um, and so what the students did is that they started taking the principal's colleges down in Nicaragua, and they refugied themselves inside them. I'm talking about La Poly, which is one of the biggest, La Uni, that is the engineering university down there. And what the government did, they didn't give any answer at the people. They just sent more police to shoot at people.
Mm.
And I don't remember if it was on the second or the third day that things really started like heating up like a lot, and the police was trying to get all the students out of the colleges. and
So they were
and
barricading themselves in in the college in the
correct,
buildings or just
yeah,
on the campus. I mean,
on the campus.
Nicaraguan colleges. Do you have several buildings on a big campus, or is it mainly like one building, or what's it like?
No,
What are
no,
they like?
it's they're way different because like Uni, which it was the main one that was protesting at that moment, it has several buildings inside the campus. It's not just one. But like Upoli, which is the other one, it has just one building. Um,
Mm.
so technically, the police started going around the college trying to take them out. The students went out, and all they can do is defend themselves with rocks or trying to find stuff to throw at the police because it's bullets against technically
Yeah.
anything. Um, and the Catholic Church opened the church, the main cathedral church on Manawa. They opened the doors to let people refugee themselves inside the church, and inside there was doctors and people taking care of the injured people. On that group was my dad and one of my brothers. They both are volunteer firefighters, and they decided to go and volunteer and go and take care of the people there. So they got
Hmm.
inside the church, and the problem is that because the government controls everything, they gave a rule to all the hospitals to not take care of the people that got injured in the protests. So by
And
now,
and
but by
you have government run healthcare, so the government can say that, right? It's not like they're
correct.
telling private companies don't do this. It's they already run the hospital, so they get to say who gets treated and who doesn't.
Exactly. So by now we have almost 500 people that have died in the past 4 months. I can tell you that a
Mm.
lot of them couldn't could have survived if the hospitals would have treated them. Most of
Wow.
them died in the front door of the hospitals.
Oof.
So it was like that bad. And we had a case that they one of the youngest victims of that day was Alvaro Conrado, who was just 15 years old. He was in high school. He wasn't even a college student. When he saw everything, he decided to go to the protest and to take water to the one who were protesting. So he was with a big bag of water, giving water to everyone, and a police guy shot at him, and he shot him in the neck.
Oh.
People started trying to get him to the hospital, and the hospital didn't receive him, so he died in the front door of that hospital. And so technically, when my dad and my brother saw that, and other people, they decided to create this volunteer uh, group with doctors, students, and firefighters that wanted to go to the protest and take care of the people. So they were inside that cathedral cathedral day, and the police with the Sandinista sympathizers got into the cathedral campus, and they started surrounding the cathedral, and they started shooting at it, and
Shooting at the
the,
church.
shooting at the church, waiting for the people that was inside to go out and, I don't know,
Oh.
probably kill them or take them to jail or whatever. And one of the priests that has become one, for me personally, one of the Nicaraguan heroes in this battle, who is Monsignor Baez. He went out and talked to them, and he talked to people on the government to try to make them realize what they were doing and to tell the police to go and let the people go out. So I remember that my dad called me that day, and I was like seeing everything from TV, and I was like, this is just too crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And so before midnight, um, everyone could go out of the church after maybe staying there like, I don't know, a day, 2 days almost, and um, everyone made it that day to their homes because of that call that this priest did, and that he has the bravery to go out and face the police and tell them, don't do this, or I don't know what exactly he told them. But
Mm-hmm.
so the next days I was like, okay, we need to find something to do. So I started going to the protest, and with a couple of friends we started going to the colleges to bring supplies to the ones who were barricading themselves inside, because they're trapped there, and nobody nobody could take them out because
Mm-hmm.
the police was surrounding the colleges 24 hours. Like, they wouldn't stop.
So was
And
it
also,
dangerous for you to go in? I mean, were
it,
you risking not being able to come back out again?
it
And
was
would they let
dangerous.
people go?
It was dangerous for everyone, not just for me. I mean, it became something surreal for us because on our way, a couple of times the police stopped us and took the supplies that we had out of our car,
Mm.
and and because they knew that all those supplies were for the students. So you can see like the level of evil that these people it's trying to manage. And so a lot of students kept dying because every night the police would start shooting at the colleges,
Oof.
and it was crazy. They even started having snipers in different points, so it was a massacre. And um, I started also trying to help these um, doctors group, trying to find resources to keep buying medicines and to keep helping the people. So with my brother and my dad, we started touching doors and trying to find people that could help. So a lot of people here in the U.S., friends and contacts that I have, help us to raise some money and to keep buying medicines down there to keep treating the injured people. Um, so the violence technically just keep growing and growing. And at some point you started thinking, okay, but the police is doing this, the Sandinista sympathizers are doing this, where is the army? And that's the question that the people started questioning, like, where's the army? They are supposed to do something, or they haven't say even if they are with the president, or if they are with the people.
Mm.
So then people started, because it's kind of a small country. I mean, I won't say that everyone knows everyone, but you uh you know people, a lot of people. So
Yeah.
people started recognizing people that they know that are in the army dress up as police men.
Oh.
So that turned everything like, okay, so we are alone in this. And
So Ortega essentially was using the military uh, to suppress the protests, but was hiding it by having them dress up as policemen. So it didn't look like he was bringing in the army, but he was actually bringing in the
Exactly.
army.
Even today, the army haven't say anything or do anything dress up as military,
They haven't
but people
officially.
know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but people know that they have dressed up as policemen, killing at people, and
Mm.
there is a lot of stuff that happened in the past 4 months, and at some point, I feel that it escalated because he turned the militaries, policemen, and Sandinista sympathizers into paramilitaries. So he gave them guns, and now there is all these death squads going around the cities trying to find people that has go protest or help on any of the protests to take them to jail. And now one point is going to jail because of this, and I personally will be okay if I was just going to jail and being there because of something that I did that it was correct.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that they take you to jail, they torture you, and for a couple of weeks, and then you have two options. They release you with your body all destroyed, or your body will just appear in somewhere in the city dead. So that's what started happening, and it's silly because it reminds us to the last dictator that the Sandinistas tried to take out, that it was Anastasio Somoza. That's something he would do. He would take people to the same jail that Sandinistas are using right now, who is called that is called El Chipote, torture them, and then kill them. And bodies started appearing in the cities back in the 70s, and they are doing the same thing. It's like they study everything the last dictator did, and now they are applying it
Mm.
on us. And
Well, and last time it led to the Nicaraguan Civil War, didn't it?
you'd end up in a civil war. And I feel that that's something that now Nicaraguan people is trying to avoid,
Yeah.
because our economy couldn't take another war. I mean, because back in the 72 we had like this giant earthquake that destroyed almost the entire capital, and that costed a lot of money. Then civil war came, that costed a lot of money and human lives and everything. So Nicaraguan people, it's people that is always fighting, and that are they could go to war and fight any dictator and take him out, but we also don't want our people to suffer more that
Yeah.
have suffered in the past. So um and obviously the resources are different, and now we're trying to get to take it to a more trying to dialogue with the government. That is something that it didn't end up that well. And so now we're trying um, to trust in the international organizations to help us, because Nicaragua, it's a monopoly. Everything is controlled. Even the TV, most of the channels are controlled by Ortega, are owned by Ortega actually. So the
Mm.
content they create, it's no, we didn't do anything wrong. The Nicaraguan government, it's always doing good stuff and this and that. So there's actually people that believe that, because that's the only content they get.
Hmm.
So and
So the
and
propaganda is
technically,
pretty strong right now.
oh yeah, it has always been strong. He
Yeah.
never end up his political campaign. It's always on, and you could go to the Nicaraguan streets and always see billboards with Ortegas and his wife, which, by the way, it's the vice president. um,
Yeah, see, here we have
Yeah,
the wife
that
is the first lady, not the vice president. Oh boy! And
you
you'd mentioned earlier that Ortega's family owns or runs the Social Security Administration. I mean, so he has there's a lot of cronyism or whatever with his family in government. Also, is that correct?
that's
It's not
correct.
just.
It's not just him. Like they have his son Laureano taking care of some of the international trades that Nicaragua has with different countries. So he's the face that technically other countries sees.
Mhm.
He owns a couple of channels. They have another son that owns another couple of TV channels, and so they technically have been building this empire to control everything. To that now that people is trying to rise against them, they can't. So one of the things that they started doing behind all this socialism mask that they use is that Ortega in 2006, when he got the power, he said that, or his like, um, his purpose it was to make the people president. That's what he said. So he started putting these leaders in every neighborhood, obviously Sandinistas,
Mhm.
that would take care of the people needs. That would be like the bridge between the people and the government. Like these people was always sending reports of what the people needed, and so they would take care of their needs and whatever they needed. Um, that was a way to put spies on every neighborhood. So now that the
Mhm.
thing has turned, they are using that same people, that same leaders that were supposed to report everything that the people needed. They are reporting the people that went protest and that went to take care of the students and everything. So technically, one day the police appear on your home and yeah, we know that you went to this protest, so now you're going to jail. How did they know that? Because of the leaders that Ortega put in every neighborhood. So they have been preparing everything
Mhm.
to this moment. So when people start raising, there's nothing we can do actually without any help, like from outside.
Yeah. Well, uh, sorry, I know that the
It's okay.
U.S. did get involved with the Civil War back with I think it was the Sandinistas versus the Contras. I think it was,
Correct.
and I've heard mixed reviews on that. I've heard some people say that the U.S. made it worse, and others, yeah, I don't know. I've heard some people say it was good, some people say it was bad. From the perspective of a Nicaraguan who has lived there, what would you say? Do you think that military intervention is a bad thing?
Well, okay. There wasn't like a real military intervention, like U.S. troops coming here, and yes, they got involved a lot because there was a lot of countries that were trained by military troops here in the U.S. Um, and the U.S. was the one in charge of sending guns down to the Nicaraguan Contras to fight
Mm-hmm.
against the Sandinistas. Obviously, I didn't live that era, but I love to read about it, and also I grew up hearing my dad's stories because there was something that got people really mad with Sandinistas back in that time, and it was the forced military service.
Mm.
Um, so my dad was one of them that has to go to war and fight with a Sandinista flag, even when he didn't believe in them and he didn't want them or like them. One day he was at school and a truck parked in front of that and took all the males that were young to fight the Contras.
Mm.
So I think that there is obviously for me there is not positive things about a war. There is always the bad things, and the people is the one who always gets the worst parts of it. So
Yeah.
actually, for me, it's not important at some point if the U.S. did this or not. Like if it was good of them getting involved or not, because at the end, actually, it was the people that who suffered the entire war, and the politicians, they were like all fresh and just sitting in their house, or in the case of Daniel Ortega, when they were trying to take out the Somoza dynasty, he wasn't even in Nicaragua. He was in jail in Costa Rica, like for 7 or 8 years. And Sandinistas believe that he was the leader who took them free, but that's actually not true.
Mm.
So, and I think that obviously that war between Contras and Sandinistas also lead to a pretty bad, not just social but also economic situation in Nicaragua. And I don't like comparisons, but actually it was really bad the way that Venezuela is living it right now. Um, I remember I saw a couple of days ago uh, a photographer in Venezuela. He tried to show people how bad the economy was. So he put several stuff in 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 um, in front of him, and behind the stuff he put all the money you need to buy that stuff.
Hmm.
So
I think I saw
you
that
will
picture.
see like, yeah, so you would see like a toilet paper roll, and behind that a huge pile of bills that you need to buy just that one roll. So that's how it was Nicaragua in the 80s.
Mm.
If you go to the supermarket, you couldn't buy anything you want. You have to buy like maybe 2 pounds of rice and just one toilet paper roll or something like that. So I feel that it's something that has to happen in some way, and don't take me wrong this way, to force Daniel Ortega to say, okay, let's take uh, elections in advance. That it's something he did in 1990, that Doña Violeta Chamorro won, and it was like the first democratic president that we had in so many years. And the first thing she did was to avoid and to delete the military service. So that was a big step for Nicaragua,
Yeah.
and that's something that I feel that it couldn't have happened without it. So if you ask me like how can I take that for today, I feel that we need to find a way to force Ortega to take elections in advance without going to a civil war.
Hmm.
That's something that is going to be hard, but I believe that it's one of it's maybe the best solution we have, because we know he wouldn't want. I mean, something that that you need to know that through history there was another political party strong, that it was PLC, that people call them los liberales. So after Doña Violeta won in the 90s, uh, it was a liberal political party won the presidency with Arnoldo Alemán. Um, that didn't end up well because we had Hurricane Mitch back in the days,
I remember that.
and
Yeah.
I know a lot of people knows about that. So technically, what he did, he stole all the money that other countries sent it to Nicaragua, and he was a thief.
Yeah.
um,
And we see that happen a lot when natural disasters hit these third world countries and American people just they want to help, so they send all this money and it ends up lining the pockets of politicians. It doesn't actually get to the people. So
correct.
often.
And the thing is that after him, after Arnoldo Alemán, the Liberales won again which was surprising, and it was Enrique Bolaños, the one who won. It was a third age man that he what one of the first thing he did, he took Arnoldo Alemán into jail. He was from the same political party, and Arnoldo Alemán was the leader of that political party. So when you see this guy coming and taking this guy to jail, you say, "Wow, this guy have balls! Like he can rule this country." And but what happened is that Sandinistas starting uh, doing boycotts against this government from the ground. Like they weren't in power, but they could control a lot of people and trying to boycott this government. And now I'm someone that believes that politicians and politics um, in my country is a joke. Like we are full of all these people that has stolen. They're always full of corruptions and looking for what is best for them and not actually for the people. So it's
Hmm.
hard for Nicaraguan people to actually believe in a leader that will come and say, okay, I will lead us, and we're going to take this dictator down and everything. So Ortega, what he did back in the days, it's to make a pact with Arnoldo Alemán, who was in jail because he was charged of corruption, and they starting like making trades, and one of them it was that Liberales will let him win the next elections in 2006, and because the parliament was technically ruled by these two political parties, half and half, what they did is that, okay, you're gonna tell your political party's parliamentists to vote anything I say. So technically, what they did is that because Sandinistas force, there wasn't a lot of people that believed in them actually.
Hmm.
So because of what happened in the 80s and all that stuff, so what they did is to take down the percentage you need to win an election from 50 to 35, which doesn't make sense. So
Oh, okay. So
or
in order to it previously to win the election, he had to get 50% of the votes, and they changed it and said now he only needs 35% to win.
correct. And he won the elections with 37%.
Ah,
So he came back
they knew
into
what they were
power. Yeah. So um, and he came with all this socialism phase, which was different than what he was in the 80s, trying to show a new face or something like that. And also he
doing. Wasn't he a bit of a communist back in the 80s? That he would take land from rich people to give it to the poor people? I think
yeah,
I've heard that
that
from.
that's what in Nicaragua we call that the piñata. Um,
Okay, why do you
yeah,
call it that? I
because
know what a
it's like,
pinata is. I'm just,
yeah,
uh,
he started taking people properties and
mhm.
starting to spread it in his family or Sandinista sympathizers. It's like when you
Ah,
go to a piñata and try to get a candy from it. So you have all these people going for all these properties. All of them
mhm.
were Sandinistas or Ortega's family. So it's pretty common to go to Nicaragua and to hear, yeah, my grandpa had this big land, but not anymore because the Sandinista took it.
Mhm.
So actually, one of my grandpas lost a couple of houses because of them, because they were like, okay, now these houses are ours, and we're going to give it to whoever we want, to whoever support us. So that's something that I like to call our country Wonderland, because it's that there is a lot of things that happen there that normally they're not supposed to happen, and that sounds fairy, and but I believe that our country could do better. I mean, our people can do better, and now the people that is racing now, it's different than the one in the 80s. We're
Mm-hmm.
not looking for the force to take him out. And I know for some people could sound stupid, because I have received comment like, why don't you just take guns and shoot at him? And okay, first of all, he took all the armor shops when the protests were starting. He took all the guns out of the armor shops. Like, there is
Mm.
no place in Nicaragua you can buy a gun right now. And
So,
because
so it's
he
legal to
that
own a gun, but he took all the guns away so nobody can
it's
get them.
legal. Yeah, in Nicaragua it's legal to own a gun, but obviously it's harder to get a gun than here in the US. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's legal, and there is people that carry their own gun. It's like in one of the things in Masaya, which it was the center of the revolution, Sandinista in the 80s. They are now against Ortega, and the police were trying. I mean, the people there built like 90 barricades in the entire city. So the entire city was barricaded, and the police tried to take out all the barricades, and you would see people there that, and I know that because my dad was there, and he was like, people owns guns. They have guns from the 80s. Like, they have AK-47 and different rifles, and not all the people, but there is people that keeps them in their houses. And you ask them, why don't you use that against the police that is trying to kill you? And they're like, because we lived the war in the 80s, and we don't want that to come and get our sons and daughters again as we lived it in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I would say that is different now than it was back then.
And at this point, it does seem to be just getting worse and worse. Do you think that it will get to the point where the people will say, "Okay, war is better than putting up with this," or do you think it's more likely people will just knuckle under and say, "All right, never mind," put the head down and just do whatever Ortega says?
I feel that maybe there is people that actually wants war. I,
Mm.
I I I mean, most of the people doesn't want it, but there is always a group that it's always saying, no, let's take guns and go. Yeah, but you won't do that without uh, someone providing the guns, and
Yeah.
that's the difference between now and back with the Contras when the U.S. got into it and sent guns into Nicaragua. So it's pretty hard right now to say that Nicaragua will go into a civil war because we actually don't have the resources, and there is not a political party behind us, like supporting us and getting money and trying to sponsor this fight. It's it's just the people. It's actually
Hmm.
the the normal Nicaraguan that that lives his life. It's the one who is actually on the streets protesting. It's the farmers. It's all the teachers, the students. It's actually the people without any help and without any political involved into it. That's what makes this revolution beautiful and what it's make it different than any other revolution.
Hmm.
Um, and it's something that is not gonna stop. Nicaraguan people doesn't give up, and we won't give up until we see him down. And that's something that eventually will happen. It doesn't matter if it's in 1 month or in 4 years. It will happen.
Hmm. So at this point, the better answer in your mind would be not military intervention and not bringing in guns, because it sounds like there are enough
Oh,
people that would take the guns. If we were to bring them in, then yeah, there are people who would love to start a war, but
yeah.
it would be pretty bad for the country. So what would be better is if there was enough, say, international pressure on Ortega to just resign, to just step down. And but it seems like that wouldn't fix the problem. And I mean, it sounds like it would help, but it still wouldn't fix it because he's got so much of his family in power and owning everything. It seems like it's going to be a complicated solution, no matter what the
Yeah,
solution is. It sounds like it's going to be pretty complicated.
the problem is that um, normally the people that doesn't know their story or their country history, they will repeat it again.
Yeah.
And knowing about how bad was the war in the past years and how many brothers we and sisters we lose in that war, it makes you realize that it's not worth it, and that yes, we are under a dictatorship, and yes, we have gone for a lot of dark days, and it doesn't seem to bright up soon, but there is always another way. I mean,
Hmm.
obviously the force and the guns and and the militaries, it's what they are going to put on the table, because that's all they know to do. That's all they know. But if you try to sit with them, with the Sandinistas, and trying to make them realize and to talk about history and talk about common sense, that's not their area. That they won't be at the same level as the normal people. So
Well,
um,
they are in power. They only have things to lose, not to gain.
exactly.
So,
And the other thing is that, and I'm going again into this socialism um,
mhm.
phase, because there is supposed to be a good socialism way. Like, socialism is based on different things that actually dictators use. So you will see it back in Cuba, you will see it in Venezuela, you will see in Nicaragua, that socialism, at least in Latin America, doesn't work.
It has
Because,
never worked anywhere. It has been tried in
yeah,
better countries too, or more wealthy countries too, and it never works.
it has been tried. And the thing is that the problem is when socialism lead to corruption,
Hmm.
and and these people try to use this it's like they send you a gift that it looks all well wrapped and it looks beautiful on the outside, but when you open it, actually yeah, it's not gonna work. And the thing is that in Nicaragua, he implement this where they are giving everything to the poor people. And I don't want to sound classist with this, but he would give them like a chicken or a pig to raise him, and then eat it or sell it or whatever you want to do with it. I'll give you also a small house, but remember, you have to vote for me, and whatever I said, you have to say yes. So
Hmm.
people actually is that hypnotized. um, so they don't want Sandinistas to go. There's a small group that actually don't want Sandinistas to go because Sandinistas gave me my home, or Sandinistas gave me this. I don't see any other political party that have give me all this. So they are
Yeah.
slaves and they don't know it. So
Yes.
there's a point where they become slaves, and you'll see it because every time there is a protest about anything, even in the past years, against Sandinistas, they will take the Sandinista sympathizers to be around the city with the Sandinista flag, trying to stop the protest. So
So when
yes,
you
we're
talk about Sandinista sympathizers, you're referring, or this is mainly people who are very poor, who are just being given things by the government, and so they want this government to continue so that they can continue to be given things. Is that correct? Or is
for
that
me
a
there is, for me there is three levels inside the Sandinistas party. One, it's poor people that have received things by them. The second one, it's the group that actually went to war with them back in the 80s, fight with them when they were a guerrilla.
Mhm.
And
I
the
thought the
third
Contras
one,
were the guerrillas and then the Sandinistas was the army. Is that, do I have that backwards?
because back in the 70s they were just a guerrilla fighting against the dictatorship. Yes, in back in the 80s when it was against the Contra, the Sandinistas were in the one in power, and the Contras were the guerrilla. But at some points at the beginning they were just a small guerrilla fighting against the dictator.
Mhm.
So and the third one, it's the one who actually enjoying the power. So it's all these politics that are in the power, and they will say yes to anything that Daniel Ortega or his wife says because she has a lot of power. And and and, and, and I've seen it from inside. So
How
there's
does she have power apart from him, or she just shares his power as the vice president?
they share it, but she also has divided the party inside, like from the formers um, Sandinistas that are with Daniel Ortega that fighted back in the 80s and that were in the army are one
Mhm.
part of the Sandinista group, but there is also another group that is with the vice president, which it's kind of weird because the thing is that the former Sandinistas didn't like when Ortega gave all this power to his wife. So that's why at least the leaders of the Sandinista parties are divided from inside. But obviously the people, they love them both. I mean, the Sandinista people love them both the same
Mhm.
because for them it's and for people, here's the thing, because of the socialism act that they have, they truly believe that all they have is because of their president, and they don't realize that all they have, people actually paid it with their taxes, and
Mhm.
and that actually the president is using the government money to do that. He's not taking his wallet out and saying, "Okay, I'm gonna pay for this for these people." That doesn't happen, and he's just giving us maybe 15% of what actually the people is supposed to get from all those taxes because he's taking all the 85% for himself and his family.
So taxes in Nicaragua, is it mainly high income tax or high sales tax or both?
Both, actually both. Um,
Do you
like
know
it's
about what the
ridiculous.
percentage is? And I guess in the US, we have progressive income tax. So the more you make, the higher percentage of your income you have to pay. And if you don't make
Yeah.
much, you pay a very low percentage. Is it similar?
Yes. It's similar, but actually people doesn't know the exact percentage like that they take out of your pay like every month. We know that you have to start paying like big taxes when you earn more than 10,000 cordovas a month, which it's
That's only about
around.
$500 a month, right? Hold on. So I
No,
think or
it's
it's
less.
30.
It's 350 or something like that.
Yeah, actually, I think it's 320. I forgot the
Okay.
inflation rate. I
Yeah.
visited Nicaragua many years ago, and the exchange rate was 20 cordobas to the dollar then, but I think it's over 30 now.
It's around 32 if I'm not wrong right now.
Okay,
Um,
so
so
once you
that's
make a
what
little over 300 a month, you're paying income tax.
you pay taxes. Yeah, the income, and obviously as the U.S. in a way you are earning more money, you're paying more taxes,
Mhm.
and the other thing is that stuff is really expensive down there
Yeah.
compared to other countries, and that's because any electronics or um, stuff like TV, like fridge, cell phones, and everything. If you want to get it into Nicaragua, there is a 36% of tax you have to pay for it.
Hmm.
36, when in other countries it's compared like 8% or 7% or 10%. It's way up because what they did through a law, they made all this stuff that actually is basic stuff, like a cell phone is so basic right now for everyone, and they made it look like it's a luxury.
Hmm.
So in that way, they could get more taxes from it.
Yeah. Which makes it harder for stories to get out about the protests and everything if people I mean, if something big happens in America or in Great Britain or Australia, something like that, everybody whips out their cell phone, so it's all over social media. Whereas down in Nicaragua, when this happens, people don't you don't have as many cell phones coming out to be able to record it, so you don't have as much record of things happening just on the streets.
Actually, that's something that I feel that is way different than past. That in the past is that social media became like a huge platform for Nicaraguans in the past 4 months. Even Twitter, like
Mhm.
I've always been a Twitter lover, but normally people just use Facebook and that's it.
Mhm.
But now with everything that was going on, it was way easier to know about everything and the real situation, because if you turn on the TV you will see just the government version of it,
Mhm.
and you won't realize what actually happened. So social media was there to say, no, this is actually the way what it happened, and guess what, I have a video of it and here I show you to you. And Twitter and Facebook became like the everyday income for Nicaraguans to be aware of what is happening actually in the entire country, because it began in Managua, but which is the capital, but it spread so fast to the other parts of the country in just a couple of weeks.
Mm. So the protests are now all across the country. They're not just in Managua.
Exactly. Actually, there is a big protest today and tomorrow because uh, it's tomorrow is our Independence Day celebration.
Ah.
So people, it's taking the protest like in a stronger way this these 2 days. And yes, they are gonna keep protesting. They're not gonna stop. Yes, it's with less. I feel that there is less people protesting in
Hmm.
some way because of the fear. Because right now it's like
Yeah.
they will hunt you down. Like if they see you and they know that you were there, it's like the police doesn't. And now they're on a phase where they doesn't care what the international or the press media think about them. They will do it in a midday.
Yeah.
Like
The UN actually sent a delegation down there, and Ortega threw them out. Right.
exactly. He actually let them in at the beginning because he thought that he could fool them and make
Hmm.
them believe that, because what he's trying to the position that he's trying to show to the international countries is that there is actually another political power trying to take him down off the power, and that it's financed by the US, and that the CIA, it's yeah, it sounds
He's
stupid,
blaming
but
the CIA
that's
for the protests.
yes.
Well, to be fair,
Actually,
they have been responsible for a lot of bad stuff, but I don't think that
yeah.
that's what's going
I
on
I
now.
I can assure you they have biggest problems than this right now to focus. And actually something that it happened to me, and I was like laughing out loud about it. It was that on one of the protests, because I was going to the protest, yes, to protest, but also to take pictures at it. And one, there is always a Sandinista photographer that I know him, and that he was inside the protest taking pictures of people to send it to the Sandinista government and start
Mm.
pointing at people. And that's how also I got so exposed, because um, obviously I was with my camera taking shots, and then one day just going through Facebook, I found this Sandinista Facebook page with a lot of pictures of me saying that I was a CIA photographer sending pictures to the U.S. I was like,
And
whoa,
this was
so
news to you.
this is new. I was like, when are you receiving my check? Because it's gonna be huge. So,
Wow.
and people actually believe that. I mean,
Yeah.
there
Well, and the
you
fact that
see
you had to
all
live in
the
the US, I mean, now I imagine a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, look, now there's proof because he left." But in reality, if you had stayed, it sounds
exactly,
like they would have killed you, or there's a distinct possibility. Is it? Would you say?
exactly.
I mean, essentially, they were accusing you of
Yes,
being a spy, a foreign spy.
they were accusing me of being a spy, and also, I started using my Facebook page to tell the people about the situation and to create aware and to I actually have done that for the past. I mean, I started doing it like for real on the protest, but I've been always complaining about the government on my Facebook page like for the past 10 years.
Yeah,
So
I think that's normal for
uh,
almost anyone in any country. But yeah.
yeah. So, but I started like really writing about the situation and this to create aware because I also have a lot of friends that are out of Nicaragua that wanted to know what was happening inside the country and how crazy it was.
Hmm.
But I never realized how viral it was my post becoming. So people started sharing and sharing, and then people started sending me everything that was happening. Like at midnight my phone wouldn't stop ringing because people is like, hey, this is going on right now, spread it on Facebook or something like that. um, so that also spotted me for the government.
Hmm.
And I also started helping, well, also helping with the medical crew and a group of hackers that I know
Oh
started
dear.
taking down, yeah, started taking down some government media websites down. So I got involved into that too. And uh, we tried to fight with everything we had, and
Hmm.
I think that I don't regret about anything, and I know that
Yeah.
any one of my family, because even I got really involved into it, and also my dad and my brother got more involved because they were traveling around the country with the medical team trying to get people injured. They were in the cover of a couple of newspapers and at TV because obviously they were the only um, medical group trying to help, and the institution, and here is something, because actually there is a two firefighters institutions in Nicaragua. There is the Dirección General, the General Direction of Firefighters, which is a pro-government institution. Uh, and there is the other one, which is um, the other firefighters. No, um,
Are they
the
neutral?
Benemerito,
I mean, I assume they're not anti-government, otherwise they would
the,
have been shut down.
yeah,
But they're
the
just
the Benemerito Cuerpo de Bomberos, which my dad and my brother were volunteers at it. And they are supposed to be not a political. They won't have political affiliations or
Mhm.
government affiliations because they don't receive anything from the government and this and that. So and actually they decided to support the government because the captain of the station, he worked for the government in the past. So he received a call from the government, as all the hospitals, to, yep, don't take out any truck or anything to help people, or we will try anything against you guys. So technically the Benemerito Cuerpo de Bomberos, they haven't done anything to help the people. And on social media and on this and that, they have tried to show the people that they have help, but they actually didn't do anything, and
Hmm.
they even hid the trucks to not help the people. But here's the thing, going back to what I was saying, is that yes, I got involved and I got exposure, but even my brother and my dad got more exposure than me, and on a way that they could have get shot in different places.
Are they still
And
there, or have they come to the U.S. also?
no, no, they are both in Guatemala actually.
Okay.
Um, so technically, what happened that my dad started seeing that everything was getting worse and worse, and that they couldn't go out anymore to keep helping the people. And also, I got a call from a friend that works inside the government, and he have been like the past month giving me information about it and to spread it in social media and this and that. And he called me, and he was like, okay, so you trust me, right? I was like, yeah, what's up? And he was like, you need to leave now. And I was like,
Oof.
what the heck is going on? He was like, okay, so the police is looking for you and your brother. Like, they have pictures, like a they have like a resume of you and your brother, and they are going to look for you, and they might go to your house and take you out. So I was like, I freaked out. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I need to do something, because even in the past I started receiving death threats from calls, from cell phone calls, and I was like, man, they still don't know where I live. But when he knew me, and when he told me that, and I heard that he was so desperate, and my dad was also desperate, I was like, okay, we need to do something. So one day after that, my brother left the country, and then 2 days after that, I left the country to come to the United States, and a week later, I had to take out father, um, my dad, out of the country because of he started receiving threats also.
Mhm.
So technically, that's how they have been working, and I mean, not all the people has the opportunity to leave the country and this and that. There is a lot of people that have received threats, and that one day they just receive the police on their houses. And
Mhm.
right now, I have friends right now that are in jail, and they probably have been tortured, and and we don't know what is going to happen with them. So that's technically how the situation is right now. Like, the technically what they are doing is sending all these death squads around the cities, and the police to witch hunt the people that have been protesting, to take them to jail, because also what they did, it's that the parliament um, created this law that technically accuse everyone that has been on the protest. They accuse them of terrorism. So
Mhm.
if the police prove that you have been protesting, now they can take you to court and to say yes, we can accuse him of terrorism, and that's how they have been putting people in jail for years now. So now they are not just torture them and kill them; they are torture them. They take them to court. They receive like 10 years of jail and send them to jail. So that's how it's working right now.
So he's really trying very hard to squelch the protests, to make everyone afraid to talk back or to do anything.
He's really afraid. I mean, he
Ortega is?
knows Ortega is afraid. He seems desperate, especially with all the, yes, it's hard to see it that way when you see all the police in the streets and everything, but
Mhm.
you actually don't realize that he's trying to kill people that didn't have guns and that was just protesting against him, and that are asking for elections in advance, but he doesn't want to take them in advance because he knows he will lose. And
No. When you say elections in advance, that's not something, that's not a term I'm familiar with, to be honest. What does that mean?
Okay, so technically, the next elections are supposed to be in 2021. So what people is asking is to have the elections at least
Oh,
on March next year.
okay.
So, um, and also to have a international like the UN or the OAS taking care of it, like because in the past two elections Ortega just stole it. Like
Hmm.
he just we don't even know if he won or not. He just stole it. So um the thing is that he is afraid because he have seen all the international reactions, and I feel that OAS is one of the organizations have uh, that have worked a lot in trying to support to find ways to support Nicaraguans, but anything has been like crucial to take him out. I feel that the international organizations need to put more pressure on him, and it wouldn't have to be this way, but because of the situation in Nicaragua and how it works, more pressure in the Ortega family is more pressure on the government. So because they are all involved in it. So like the U.S. have this Magnitsky law that they have applied in police, um, the police captain down in Nicaragua. So what the Magnitsky law does technically it's to uh, they cancel all the U.S. visa for the guy affected and his family, and they freeze all the bank accounts that they have outside Nicaragua, and that's one way to put pressure on them because obviously the Ortega family they're millionaires.
Hmm.
They have a lot of money, and I can bet you that they don't have their money in Nicaragua.
Hmm.
And
It would make
and
sense.
and obviously they have a lot of trades and things and business even in here in the US. So that's one way to put pressure on them. And
So,
people it's
so there are things that the international community can do without
yes,
resorting to violence that will encourage Ortega to step down peacefully, just so
yes,
that he doesn't lose everything.
correct. The UN is also now trying to get involved and it like for real involved because they sent a team that was just observing everything and sending reports to the UN, but nothing else than that. Um, so there is people that are actually thinking on asking the UN to send the blue helmets down to Nicaragua, which is technically the UN army.
Oof.
Um, which I'm not a big fan of it. So
Yeah.
I've seen what the blue helmets have done in several countries, but obviously there is a lot of people that doesn't know about that, and um,
Well,
for
and
me, that after for me okay, this is my thing with it. For what I've seen in other countries, after the blue helmets go into a country and go, oh, there is nothing but devastation, and um,
mhm.
you we have the example of all these women that have said that a lot of blue helmets raped them, and because they didn't have anything to defend themselves.
Yeah.
So the cure could be worse than the illness.
Yes.
So um, that's why I don't trust them and I don't believe in that option. Um, so yeah, that's technically
Yeah, I agree. I don't like military intervention. I hate when the U.S. gets militarily involved in other countries, especially. Um, so yeah, I'm definitely with you there.
the
But man,
problem is
so
that the
at
problem
this,
is that
oh, go ahead.
okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Just this. The problem is that, and 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 don't take this wrong, but normally U.S. governments just want to solve everything with military force, and
Yes.
that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. It's rather frustrating. A lot of Americans will say that that America is the world's police. It's like, well, if you look at the American police, their answer to everything is let's shoot it. So no,
Yeah.
I mean, no, okay, I'm exaggerating. I am exaggerating, but you get the idea. It's like no, let's not be the world police if we're basing ourselves on. Well, anyway. So at this point, though, it sounds like if individuals want to help, the best thing to do is to just raise awareness, is to let people know what's going on. Just because the more people who know, and the more people are talking about it, the more pressure that's going to put on Ortega. And ideally, people should not be calling for military intervention. They should not be saying, "Hey, let's send the armies," but rather just say, "Hey, he needs to stop." Just kind
Correct.
of verbal, I don't know what you'd call that, but social pressure, so to speak.
Yes, and because we have the example, and again, I hate comparisons, but I cannot stop doing this, and it's, if you see and you take a look at Venezuela. Venezuela started the way we're starting right now, like in Nicaragua, with protests. I mean, at least not at the same stuff, but they started with students going out to the streets and protesting against the government. The government took out the police, started shooting at them, and the difference is that the Venezuelans just stopped doing it at some point. And the other thing is that the protests down there got a political twist because you had the other party uh, with the opposition leaders trying to support the students. So when they got into jail, the political leader, everything stopped, and that's something you can do in Nicaragua because there is not a leader. There's not someone leading, and that can be a pro, but can be a con also, because at some point we will have to choose a leader. When if we want to go to elections against Ortega, we will need a leader, and
Well, at this point, though, if
um,
even if the elections were held early, it sounds like, given that he's resorting to force, what would stop him from just taking out any opposition?
yeah, and that's why we need someone that is not into the political um, environment. The
Someone who's not a
that
career politician.
Yeah, someone that is not a career politician, and there was an alliance, a civic alliance that was created to go to the dialogue against Ortega, and that represented the people, that was formed for different students and social rights people, and the farmers had their representatives, and all that people. So the people is actually looking at this group, trying to find someone there that is not involved in the actual political reality in Nicaragua or in the past, to when the time comes to take the 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 lead and say, okay, we're going for this guy. If
Mhm.
you ask me personally, I do have my candidate, but um, so I'm someone that have never voted in the past because I'm someone that doesn't. I won't give you my vote just because you say pretty words. I mean, you need to show me that you actually are going to do something with this country and that you actually have a structured program for it.
Mhm.
So, and also, I don't like Sandinistas, so
Well, they don't
because
sound very nice.
because I love to learn about the story of my country, and the history tells me that they are not good people, and also um, having my dad telling me all the stories of all the things he lived, in back in the 80s, and all the things that the Sandinista did to his family and to his friends and everything. It makes me realize what actually they look like and what actually they are. Um, so at some point, uh, that made me study more about politics, and also to don't like the politics in my country at the same time. It's like a story of love and hate at the same time. Uh, but yeah, at some point we are going to need this leader against Ortega, and I I believe that we will find someone, and that this someone could, in a democratic way and on a normal, what I believe normal could be on our country, away from corruption and from all the bad things that we have been going through in all oral history. So
Hmm. Wow. So what do you think, if you're looking at it now, what do you think
mhm.
is going to be the most likely outcome if things just continue as they are?
There is something that I am really afraid of, and it's that people at some point stop protesting or looking for an exit,
Hmm.
and that Ortega could feel comfortable back again in the power and just living all his years in power of Nicaragua, because that actually can happen because he changed the constitution, so he can repeat himself as the president all the times he wants.
It's,
And
you used to have term limits down there, so people could only be
we
president
used
for a certain period of time, right?
yeah, we used to have all the terms that didn't allow him to do that, that didn't allow him also to have family in the government, that didn't allow him to have his wife as the vice president. That we have all what people would call normal rules of
Hmm.
common sense, but he have been changed them all, and to prepare this, and it's something that I was seeing like year by year that he was building. I remember I read this book in the past, that I'm gonna recommend to you, that is called The Prince, um,
Yes.
by Nicolas Maquiavelo. So Nicolas Maquiavelo wrote this back in, I don't remember if it was 1915 or something like that, for the
Hmm.
Medici family in Italy. So technically, what the book shows you is how you can build an empire and get to power, like taking advantage of all the people, but without depending on all the people. So because I've read that and I have that knowledge, and seeing all the changes that Ortega was doing, small step by step, a small step by small step, I was like, oh crap, this is going to get worse. And but I think that we subestimate the evil, um, ways that he has, and that he would control everything, and that he wouldn't mind killing all these people. And because there is more than 2,000 injured people because of the protests. um, but that's my biggest fear. That's my biggest fear, and that we become, and here I come again. We become a Venezuela, um, and
Hmm.
it's something that is sad, because if you see documentaries or if you read about the situation in Venezuela, you
Yeah.
realize that those dictators, they're not gonna stop. I mean, they're not gonna stop, and they don't care if people is dying, because they don't have what to eat, because the inflation is so big that $1 is like 400,000 bolivares, and you realize that people just earn like $2 a week or something like that, and that they actually don't have enough money to eat, and that they have to leave the countries, and try to find how to survive in other countries. So
Yeah.
um,
And we do hear a lot of stories about Venezuela, about what's going on down there. And somebody recently, one of the newspapers put out a story about that of people who broke into the zoo and actually stole the animals to eat. The you know,
Yeah,
and it's just they're literally starving. So it's not just raiding farms; they're raiding the zoo or whatever.
correct.
So yeah, that was one thing that made me want to talk about Nicaragua is I'm hearing all these stories about Venezuela and nobody's talking about Nicaragua. And granted, it's not quite as bad, but it's heading that way, as you say.
And I feel that there's a difference, and it's something that it triggers me because Nicaragua, Venezuela has technically an advanced situation of what Nicaragua is living right now, but the internationals organizations, yes, I'm glad that they have their eyes in Nicaragua and trying to help the people and trying to not have a worse situation than what is already right now. But we have this situation. There is people talking about Venezuela situation, but the international organizations are not doing anything for them or try to help them, like the UN or the
Yeah.
OAS. And it has been 3 years and a half that they started like really really bad, and
Some of
we
that, though,
have
is we have some world leaders who are actually saying that things are good in Venezuela, and saying that the political leadership there is doing good things. I mean, I think it was one of the political leaders over in Great Britain was actually praising the president of Venezuela, saying how he was doing such good stuff, and the rest of us were looking at him like, "Are you insane? What?"
yeah. And at some points, I think that Ortega, that's what he tried to do. He
Hmm.
tried to convince everyone that actually he was the victim in this situation. But social media, as I said, it plays a big role. And also that the human rights organizations down in Nicaragua, they started like contacting people outside in the US, and international amnesty also tried to help. And so we had, even when there is a lot of people that is not aware of the situation, there is a lot of institutions and countries that are actually aware and trying to find ways to help Nicaragua.
Hmm. Yeah. So at this point, the best people who are just on the international scene, just individuals who aren't politically involved or anything, what they can do, what would you suggest that they can do to help? Just talk about it, share it on social media, make people aware? Or is there more that can be done?
Yeah, obviously creating aware about it, and also trying to show their people in different countries what is actually going on in Nicaragua will help a lot, because that can go to the different government ears and try to find like I hate economicals blocks on countries, because actually it's people is the people that suffers everything, but it's also to put pressure on a government. But as I said, it's always the people that take the worst. But I know
Yeah.
that different governments can find different ways to put pressure on the government and trying to, because even we know that there is countries that have different traits, like personal traits with this Ortega family, and not necessarily as the president or the government of Nicaragua with the government of this country. It's more a personal business and all that stuff.
Hmm.
So that's a way that can put pressure on him.
Yeah. Well, we have a couple people in the chat just asking questions as we're going, and one of the questions is, "What does Ortega get out of this?" I mean, if he's driving his country into the ground and making everything so much worse, what would you say is his goal in this? Why? What does he get out of it?
Well, at this point, he it doesn't matter if he leaves the power now or if he leaves it in the next years. He's gonna have this image of the worst dictator that we have never had in the country. And the thing is with dictators in Nicaragua, and obviously there's always a war involved in it, but they all end up dead. And and
That's
I
a
don't
scary
know.
legacy.
it's a scary legacy, but I'm not saying that Ortega is gonna end up dead. I'm just talking about what happened in the past with different dictators that we had. Um, but whatever he decides to do, because the thing is that he has the power to say to stop this or to keep killing people and just keep earning this like presentation to the public that he is a dictator and that he is a murderer. um it doesn't matter if after that I'm pretty sure he's not gonna stay in Nicaragua if he leaves the power. If he
Mm.
goes out, it doesn't matter where he goes, that's gonna follow him and for the rest of his life and for the rest of his wife's life.
Well, at this point, though, he has, as you said, a lot of assets, so he could decide to just up and run and still live out what life he has left in some some measure of comfort. But he's probably not going to just abandon the power that he has there, I'm guessing.
The thing is that he he is a guy that didn't even finish high school, and I'm not gonna I don't want to sound like kind of bad with this because I know people that didn't go to college and they put their effort to learn something and do great things in their lives and this and that, but we're talking about a guy that have never worked in his life, that he got into jail in Costa Rica for robbing a bank to finance the revolution or something like that. And that he took the power and never wanted to let him go.
Mm.
And
So he's been a
from night to
revolutionary
the
ever since he
morning,
was a young man.
yes. So I'm pretty sure when I tell you he has never worked in his life, like um, because even with this presidential term that he has, he barely does anything. Like he doesn't even go out. Like all he does is go to Cuba or Venezuela and then go back to Nicaragua, and nobody sees him for weeks. Like um, so it's pretty weird that now he is the most millionaire man in Nicaragua. um, from coming from nothing to now have all this money and his family be so powerful and so rich. It's you know that there is corruption behind him, and you know that there is that he has stole like almost all Nicaraguan money.
Hmm. So, so it does sound it's pretty rough right now, obviously, and
Yeah.
yeah. What would ideally what would you think would be the best possible scenario going forward? What could you see happening that would
The
what would be
best
the best?
possible
Yeah.
the best possible scenario is that Ortega decides right now first to stop the repression on people because that hasn't stopped in the past 4 months.
Hmm.
Um, Second one, it's to agree to have elections at least on March of next year, but to leave the power right now and then put
Mm.
a transition government into this like I don't know 6 months that uh, people will have enough time to pick a leader and to have a campaign and this and that to have elections on March. And I know he will lose those elections. I'm pretty sure about that. And having Ortega family live in the country, it's one of the things I have dreamed in the past months. Is one of my biggest dreams. And having a new democracy in Nicaragua and a new beginning for people to rebuild the economy, because actually the economy is starting to be pretty bad, and
Hmm.
most of the people it's living for the violence, but also because they have lost their jobs and because companies are closing and all everything is collapsing. But I believe that's the best scenario for Nicaragua. That's what I believe personally.
Hmm. Now, if that happens, you would be able to go back. But if that doesn't happen, are you essentially stuck here as long as the Sandinistas are in power?
Yeah, it's a fact that I can't go back to my country while Ortega is in power.
Hmm.
I'm actually applying right now to a political asylum here in the U.S. to try to, because I have to keep working and trying to to keep moving even with all that is going on.
Yeah.
But we'll see
But because it's not
how
like you didn't
everything.
just come here and give up the fight and say, "Oh, well, I'm safe." No, you're still
No,
involved as much as possible.
I'm still involved. I'm trying to help friends down there and to even create more aware through social media when I can.
Hmm.
And but obviously it's different when you are here than you are there, because you're living it, and it has been really rough for people. People always say like, yeah, but they are safe down there, but yeah, not really. Like the first 2 months I couldn't stop crying here, and thinking not just in my family, because I really love my country, and
Hmm.
I feel that we gave everything we could to help and to try to save all the people we could. But sometimes you can. There is a point when you have to say, okay, I did what I could. Now my not just my life but also my family life, it's running danger, and if I stay, I don't know what can happen to them. So we have to make a decision, and we don't regret about it.
Hmm. Oh, that's great. So you're still active on Twitter, right? So
Yes.
if people want to follow you and keep up with what you're doing there, how would they do that?
My user is Jorge94V.
Okay,
um
I will. Uh,
I usually tweet on Spanish, but I'm gonna start tweeting on English also,
well, the nice
because
thing
it's.
about Twitter is it has an option. If a tweet is in another language, you just click a link and it automatically translates it. So
That's
if
perfect.
people follow you, they can still just it, or it translates into English anyway. I've never tried translating into other languages. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is that you can also follow me on Instagram to see pictures about the different protests that I went in the past months. So technically, the user is at Jorge Vargas G photography. So you'll find me that way, and you can be more like seeing more about the reality of what actually was the protest and how does it look like, and also to be more aware of what is actually going on.
Yeah. And I'll get those links from you also and put them in the description so people watching the video can also find it there.
Cool.
Okay. Well, this has been a bit of a long stream. I hope it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay, don't worry.
Is there anything else you'd like to say that maybe we haven't covered?
Well, obviously there is a lot of things that we haven't covered.
Well,
This is a
yeah.
long conversation, but I think we covered the essential of it, and also to help people to understand what is actually going on, and to create aware to keep spreading the word of what is going on, and how there is people. We have, as I said in the past, we have almost 500 dead people in the protests in the past 4 months. That's a lot,
Yes.
and more than 2,000 people injured. There is a lot of people missing that the government doesn't want to say where they are, if they're in jail or if they are dead. And obviously the jails are full of people that are not supposed to be in there, that they are there just because they wanted to defend their liberty and the democracy.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, and 500 dead there. I heard, I read somewhere else where someone was comparing it to the US, and they said 500 Nicaraguans dead
Hmm.
would be the equivalent of almost 20,000 Americans in the USA dead. It's
Correct.
it's a lot more than what it sounds like. So yeah.
Correct.
Anyway, but I would like to thank you for coming on. Thank you for um, giving us this better picture. We do want to spread the word. We do want to make more people aware of it, to help out as much as we can. And if that means just at this point putting social pressure on Ortega and letting our, hopefully encouraging our governments to, again, put social
Yeah.
pressure on him not to send guns, not to send the military, at least not
Correct.
unless it gets a lot worse. But
Yeah.
yeah. And so if people want to share this video, or if they want to find you on Twitter, on Instagram, there's, I would say to everybody watching, just let your friends know, because so many people just, they have no idea what's going on because the media is not talking about it. And individual
Correct.
people that know about it are talking about it, but most of them just don't know. Anyway.
All right. Just
Okay, he's
sorry
telling
about
us it's time to wrap up. Okay.
Yep.
But again, thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you, Elizabeth, for inviting me, and I hope everything I told you guys was useful.
Yeah, thank you.